Welcome back to We Love the State. This is your host, Andy Coons. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the state's favorite podcast. I almost forgot. It's the most important part of the intro. I'm your host, Andy Coons. Over here to very far to the left is my co-host, Ben DeYoung. How you doing, Ben?
Doing good. Excited for this episode. Lots of stuff going on in the world, and we got an amazing guest.
Mm-hmm. All right. Our guest today is Shaun Collins. Shaun, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been quite some time since I've done this.
Well, I feel like this episode's been a long time coming, you know, like Michigan anarchist bros, whatever you want to call us. Like,
right?
We Love the State's been going on for like 3 years now, and we haven't had you on yet. That's on us, really.
I stole Ben from you like a lot of times when you were on hiatus. He came and did my old show when I was running it or whatever. Yeah. It was, how many times do you think you've been on? 6 or 8 times, something like
that? At least, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I watched a handful of them. So, all right, well, let's get into the meat of things. War with Iran. We went and attacked Tehran. Let's see. It was Israel that attacked first, and then we jumped in right afterwards, right?
I think it was simultaneously, and I think it knocked off at 2 a.m. I think Saturday morning, or
something. Yeah, something. Yeah,
whatever their time is.
Mm-hmm. Well, on this podcast, we only recognize American time, so
whatever time it was there doesn't matter.
Yeah. So we have potentially started World War III. I was watching a TikTok of this guy who was just listing off all the things that we've seen in our lifetime, whether it was 9/11 or COVID or now, possibly World War III, the Venezuelan prime minister being abducted from his bedroom, like all this crazy shit that's happened just in our lifetimes. A lot of the stuff happening just since the turn of the century. It's every day it seems like the world is just getting crazier and crazier and crazier. How do you guys feel? When's the last time that you felt like things were normal?
Pre 9/11.
Yeah.
The 90s. Like we were probably all in high school in the 90s, and going, unless you're a little bit younger, Andy, I'm not too sure. Wait, are you older than us?
No,
he's young. He's a young.
No. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, the 90s were fairly normal, minus the original Desert Storm thing where Miss Margaret Thatcher got us into a war with Iraq. People soon forget about that, but George Bush, the OG George Bush, didn't want anything to do with going over there. He's like, hey, it's pretty much a turf war, because it was over a little plot of land between Iraq and Kuwait, that was not really belonged to anybody. So they kind of shared the oil fields, and then Iraq said, this is mine, and Kuwait got mad, and boom, boom, boom. But long story short, Bush Sr., not saying he's the good guy, but he didn't want to do it. And then Margaret Thatcher gets on the phone going, hey, don't make us look bad. And then there it was there. So,
well, Bush Jr. didn't want to do it either, right? That was something that Dave Smith and if everybody knows I'm a simp for Dave Smith. Dude he just always nails it, always. But there was a tweet that he sent out where he was like, just to let you know, George W. Bush was not willing to go into Iran. And he goes, if that is any sort of measurement on how badly the Trump administration has failed.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
What I can't believe is that at least in the previous wars, Iraq, Afghanistan, they had stupid excuses, but they at least attempted at persuading the American people why this was, a good thing, or whether this was something that we had to do. This time around, like, there has been pretty much nothing outside of their, the tired old story about nuclear weapons, which, I mean, you have to be a pretty like legendary window licker to, to suck that one down. But that's that's what's crazy this time around. It's just, and I don't know if it's just Trump's, well, they're just going to follow me no matter what because I'm God complex. And so he doesn't feel like he has to even try to justify it or explain it. But Marco Rubio just came out yesterday and said, well, Iraq or Israel said they were going to attack. And so we felt like we had to join them. And just a complete admission that this is all Israel. And that is just so incredibly bold. And man, if they can get away with it, that's kind of scary because I think that it's always a kind of a test of like, what can the state get away with? That was kind of a little bit with COVID. It's like, what can we get away with? What kind of power grabs? What can we do without any pushback? And it kind of feels like this is another one of like, can we just start a war without Congress even knowing? They didn't even notify Congress. I guess they even didn't. A lot of the U.S. embassies in the region weren't even notified, and the U.S. embassy in Israel just put out a press release saying, "Sorry, we can't help you leave the country." And it's just like, it's crazy how brazen our politicians are. Without, I mean, if they don't get, I mean, granted, I think the Republicans it's gonna be a bloodbath in the midterms. But there's no protests. There's, nobody, everybody, Americans just turn a blind eye. I think we're just so used to this kind of behavior that it just, another war in the Middle East. What are you going to do?
Well, a couple things. Now, they're also saying that Iran had more nuclear capabilities. But didn't Trump just bomb the crap out of them last year, saying they destroyed all these nuclear facilities? Have
Yeah.
people forgot about this? Like, is that just like smoke and mirrors, or like, did that not ever happen? I mean, what's really going on here? And it just goes to show, like you said, how much are Americans willing to take, which goes to my other point, that this is also American people's fault
Hmm.
for allowing this to happen. I mean, you know, let's just put it this way: people died over a 3% tax on tea,
Yeah.
right? And then now, you get 9/11 that comes through within our lifetime, right? That we're old enough to remember, vividly, not being little kids, because we were still pretty young when the original Iraq thing was going on. And, you read more stories about it than you remember it. At least that's for me, anyways. But then you figure out along the way that 9/11 was a lie, and then the 2008 crash was a lie, and then Afghanistan, the reason they were going to Afghanistan was, ridiculous. And we had to actually sell them weapons in order to put military bases over there, which was the most insane thing ever. And then, COVID comes around. Now, without saying too much, there should have been an uprising right then and there during the COVID era. There is no reasons that Americans should have sat down and did nothing during that while they closed businesses, forced, experimental shots on people, threatened people, to go to jail or whatever if they were out in public during that time, forcing old people to die alone. You couldn't go visit your family. Here in Michigan, the almighty Gretchen Whitmer was saying you couldn't even travel to your own cottages up north. Like, at that moment, Americans should have rose up and did what they needed to do.
Yeah.
And now they didn't. And now here we come with the Epstein stuff, right? And there's enough things that have come to light, and a lot of it we already knew.
Right.
The Israeli intelligence stuff, and Epstein was working for Mossad, or, whatever stuff like that. Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, was a Mossad agent, Robert Maxwell. There's all kinds of connections to that. Ehud Barak's leaked emails linking, Epstein to Israeli intelligence, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But now there's names coming out. And one of the names is the President of the United States of America. Now, his name has come up in those emails over 100 times. Some would say 1,000, depending on the reports you looked at, right? But, you can't believe everything you read on the internet either. Now, a couple times his name coming up, okay, maybe that's a coincidence. But when you're talking about 100 or more times his name's coming up in these emails, look, that's a problem. And along with, the ex-president of the United States, Bill Clinton, and, people higher up like Elon Musk and Les Wexner and all these big name figures are coming out. And there's way more to it than that. There's not even enough time to go into all that. But once again, there should be an uprising right now, and nobody's doing anything. And that is what scares me the most.
The complicity.
Yeah. Or
apathy.
That complacency. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Not complicity.
Well, so that was kind of a point that I was making on our last episode. Because it's like, I mean, our last episode, we were talking about the Epstein files mainly, but the big point that I made was like, listen, our government is run by predators, like the very worst type of person that you could possibly be is a pedophile, and our government is built by them, and so not just ours. Like, it seems like the major powers of the world are ran by pedophiles, people who have sex with children. And it's like, not to get super graphic, but I feel like you kind of have to be, to just remind people of how serious of a crime this is. This is an unforgivable crime perpetrated against a child. There's nothing lower that you can do, aside from murder. But I'm pretty sure a ton of kids probably died on Epstein's Island too.
They were eating them. That's in the
the pizza and the jerky and having like 600 gallons of sulfuric acid delivered to that island. Like, yeah, we can probably figure out what that's for, but like we're talking like like the Amalekites in the Bible levels of evil here. And I was like, Trump should be hanged. Trump should be hanged. Pam Bondi should be hanged. Anybody who has been complicit in covering up these files. Everybody on his fucking staff, after he said, are we still talking about this Epstein guy? After Pam Bondi said, what Epstein files? Every shot in the streets. That's what should have fucking happened, and that's like, I don't know. Going back to your point about, people died over a 3% tea or tax on tea. And maybe you could argue back and forth a little bit of like, was that worth, killing somebody over? It's like, I don't know. I really don't know. But raping kids that is something that's worth killing people over,
Well, the fact that some of these politicians stand out in front of the United States citizens and claim to be these Christian people, Matthew 18:6 alone says, you would be better to tie a millstone around your neck and jump into the sea than hurt one of my little ones. Something along those lines, not verbatim, but it does say that.
You got the message.
Claiming to be this Christian, these Christian leaders and stuff like that, yet they bow down to people who openly defy Christ. This is the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And, these Zionists and, we're together with the Christians. The church patriarchs of Israel, of the Orthodox Church of Jerusalem, put out a note or a letter saying Christian Zionism is not a good representation of Christians because it's impossible to be both. You can't. It's impossible.
Yeah. I'm just, I don't know. And when we've talked about this multiple times in the podcast of like, what is going to be that wake up call? And it's, you look back at history and you look back at, Germany 1920s. I mean, you just look at Argentina not that long ago before Milei took over, and they were talking about 100% inflation, like when you have rampant homelessness, and it looks like a country literally has to fall apart before it starts to change direction. And I'm just, I'm nervous about like, what does that mean for the world superpower falling apart? I mean, that's dangerous for everybody, and we're acting just incredibly rash. I'm still just shocked about, again, in the middle of peace talks, we bombed a country. Like, who is going to want to do any or believe the United States of America ever again after just dirty, like, you just can't be that untrustworthy and think that you're gonna be able to have any influence on the world. And I mean, not that I think that that's our job, but we are an empire and we are crumbling, and we are crumbling faster and faster. And maybe that is a
Hmm.
good thing. I mean, there's that, you know, was it accelerationists who just want to like fast forward through the junk to try to get to whatever's on the other side.
Hmm.
Um, and that's, you know, that was kind of the thought of like if you know, Kamala gets in, it's like, well, she's going to destroy free speech, and there, you know, like maybe it'll accelerate us to a national divorce.
Yeah.
But I just, what Trump's done is just, to me, is just, it's crazy.
It's reprehensible, it's evil, and it's unforgivable. And but here's the thing, like going back to your question of like, you know, what's the thing that's going to set people off? And this is me doing my silver lining thing again, but it's like it could be Jeffrey Epstein. You know, that guy uh died 7 years ago. I think it was 2019 when he died.
Yeah, bro.
I okay.
Indeed.
Well, I don't fully not believe that, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like
I get it. I get it. I
I
just had to say it.
I'm pissed at the leaked photos of him with his beard and his long hair and stuff like that. Those were proven to be AI, because I saw those and those ones looked real,
Right.
you know.
You
But then
sent that to me on TikTok.
yeah, yeah. But the more you look at the background of those pictures, you're like, oh yeah, that is AI. But anyway, that's besides the point. Whenever he may or may not have died by killing himself or not, um, like that was 7 years ago in politics years, and we are still talking about it today. We were just talking about it, and the US had to start a war with Iran to try to get us to stop talking about it. And so it's like this thing is just not going away. And that has been the, like, even right after it happened, people were immediately like, he didn't kill himself, he didn't kill himself. Hey, like, that's back when I was doing stand up, and there were kids, and these were like woke kids, you know, and they would go up there and they would set up a joke, and the punchline was that Epstein didn't kill himself, you know. And so it's like this thing has made such a deep and lasting impression on the American populace that, you know what, was it immediately after that 3% tax on tea went into effect that people started pulling the trigger? No, that was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I think the Epstein files has put an immense amount of pressure on the American camel, you know, and war with Iran has not been received uh positively. You know, it, like, nobody believes the polls. No, like, every single poll where it's like 90% want war with Iran, and just comment after comment of like, those are bots, those are bots. Nobody wants this war. And that's just adding more and more pressure to this camel that, you know what, maybe they try to restrict free speech a teensy tiny little tiny bit, and that's the thing that gets everybody to go like, let's go, you know. That's, I don't know, that I guess that's one way I could see things going. But honestly, I think the Epstein files are so egregious and so horrible that people cannot, they won't allow themselves to forget and move on, you know.
Well, you see a lot of people from the left are coming out and speaking out about it now. And
Mm-hmm.
people on the right were like, well, where you guys been for the last however many years? That's poppycock. That's garbage. Because you want to know what? At least they're saying something now. And if it's one way to,
Yes.
you know what I'm saying? And if
Mm-hmm.
it's a way to get people from the right and the left to actually unite and put the tribalism crap away, I'm here for it. Seriously. Because
Yep.
otherwise, the tribalism stuff is a problem. We saw it with the COVID people, on the left during that time. And now you're seeing it tenfold with the MAGA folks this time. The
Mm-hmm.
MAGA are the new liberals right now, as we
Oh
speak.
yeah.
They're the new COVID era liberals. You cannot tell them any rhyme or reason, which is absolutely insane. when the proof is in the pudding, the writing's on the walls, the guy's name's everywhere. He's got more pictures with Jeff than anybody. Not to mention who's pulling his strings. Trump ain't running this country. The banks are running this country. And the people who run the banks happen to be from a certain country who fund his pockets.
Mm-hmm.
I told you I wouldn't say the certain word. We're not going to say it. Into it.
Little itty bitty country.
A little bit.
We always seem to be involved with for some reason.
You're talking about the sister city to Lakewood, New Jersey? Anyway, yeah, it's like I was saying, I think that the Epstein files were just too big of a thing, and we've got what, 2%, 3% of all those files that have been released.
Well, I think that they released half the files. I think they said 6 million, ironically. They released half of them, and the half that they released, I think, were about 60 to 70% redacted. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we are only really seeing a small percentage of the total files.
Yeah. Yep. So then, Shaun, something that me and Ben always love to do, is we try to make predictions. We try to look, in the future of trying to Game of Thrones this a little bit. Like, what kind of impact is this going to have 5, 6, 7 years down the road? So Epstein files being released, war with Iran, who knows how long that's going to last, because it definitely felt like a 2 weeks to slow the curve or to flatten the curve type language about it. I mean, where do you see this heading? Where do you see America in 10 years from now?
Oh man, do you want me to answer that? Because it's not good.
Let's go.
A burning heap of rubble.
This is going to be a major black pill, but things aren't going to get better. They're going to get much worse. I just can't see how it's going to get better with endless war and endless money printing. We saw what happened the last time we had 20 years worth of wars, and prices of everything went up. And now we're seeing it with the housing market and stuff, and everything's out of control, and interest rates are high. And Trump wants to beat his chest, saying, "Oh my gosh, we're at 5.5% on interest rates or whatever." Like, bro, I'm paying like 3.5% interest on my house right now. Like, I don't think 5.5 interest is great at all. So what are you beating your chest over? Because it went down 0.5%. People still can't afford groceries. Their credit card payments are delinquent more now than they were back in the 2008 era crash. The bigger banks are swallowing up the smaller banks more now than ever, which was always the ultimate plan of the central banking system. If you ever read Creature, which anybody and everybody needs to read Creature from Jekyll Island by, G. Edward Griffin. That book should be taught in high schools and universities globally, not just here in the States. I mean, that's such an important piece of material, just so you understand what they're doing and how the money works and how they inflate it and deflate it. It's so gross. But in the meantime, they're playing G.I. Joe all over the world. And the military is depleted to nothing. Like, we don't have much of a military at all right now. So if they want to play games and play, World War III, at some point there's going to be conscription, because they're not going to have the manpower to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
So that's coming, which is enslavement. And I don't see somebody, like, we're not voting our way out of this.
Mm-hmm.
That's not happening. It's never going to happen. And I know a lot of guys are libertarians and they're still on fire for stuff, but we're well past that. We're not getting through this through voting. And as we've seen, Americans are not willing to do the thing that needs to be done to take the power back, because they should have done it by now multiple times at this point. So where we're headed, I'll Jesus pill you and say, hey, get your butts in church, start reading your Bibles, not to thump on y'all, but like, just bring some light into all this dark. That's what I'm trying to do anyways right now. And it helps things much better, because if you do understand all that stuff, how it ends anyways.
Yeah.
And so that's my Christ pill for y'all, is just get back into the light and get away from this darkness. Like, don't put all your time and effort into going down these rabbit holes, because I promise you they don't get better. They get darker and darker and darker the further you go, and they're endless. They're endless. And then they keep you mad at your neighbors and mad at your parents, and just mad at everyone. And for what? Like, if you really want something to change, you got to change yourself first. And then you got to start loving each other again, because you're not just going to go, well, we're going to beat the government all by yourselves. That's not how that works either. So, I mean, there's, I would say just turn your TVs off and go start loving each other, instead of, you know, getting online and, this person's bad and you're a retard because you think this way, or blah blah blah, and I'm so guilty of that. And my ex account was insane when I had that open. Some of the things I was saying to people, I look back and I was like, man, that was pretty cringe. But what are you gonna do? You can't take anything back. But that's my answer to that, because we're headed in the wrong direction. So at least get your family and your community in the right direction.
Yeah. That's great
Yeah.
advice. That has been, I love that point that you just made, because that's been something that has kept me from just totally 100% like being black pilled and getting depressed about all this. Is I had a what I'm calling a religious experience back in June, and I was an atheist for a long time before that. And um and it's crazy because when I really do think about this stuff, maybe a little too much, and I think about the horrible things happening around the world, like, it is super easy to just get like downtrodden and stuff. But then there's something about being like, you know what, in what I've read of the Bible so far, and I've read all the New Testament and a little over half of the Old Testament so far, and I haven't really come across anything that says that, there's all this bad stuff that's happening in the world, and it's your responsibility to go out there and make sure it's stopped and it never happens again. I think the Bible's very open with being like, you are a small, one single individual. You're probably not going to change the opinion of some king, And so the important thing to do is, like you said, get yourself right, get your family right, get your community right. Think small. Think about, like, how can I just be a source of good or a source of light in the small circle of people that I'm surrounded with, and ultimately, if you have a ton of people who are thinking that way, then I mean, what else can happen other than your community becomes, a better place, a safer place. Oh, my cat's trying to attack me. But anyway, the other part of that is like, if that's what I focus on, if I just focus on like trying to be a good husband, trying to be a good dad, trying to be a good Christian, trying to grow in my faith and stuff like that, I'll be okay in the end. Even if the bad guys win here, they don't win in the end, and I think that's the more important part.
I mean, these people on the Epstein files, honestly, I'm going to steal from Marmari Emanuel. I watch this guy all the time. He's a bishop out of Australia. He's an Assyrian dude. He's an Orthodox priest. But he said, man, these people who mess with these little kids will be barbecued in the afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me feel good. That makes it does, because you don't mess with kids, man. Like,
Yep.
You don't do it. It's written, you can't do that. And you guys have kids, like Ben. You have daughters, bro. Like, I don't know. Do you have sons or daughters, Andy? I know you got kids.
I have all boys.
Oh, so it's the opposite. You guys are opposites,
Yep.
But yeah, bro, like, could you imagine one of these monsters coming after your kids? Like, I guarantee you, both of you would go medieval on those people, and there would be nothing you would not do to them.
Yeah.
This is why I'm kind of thankful I never brought kids into the world, because I would lose my mind.
Well, it kind of reminds me of the Havaldi shooting, where the cops wouldn't even let the parents in to try to rescue their kids.
Oh yeah,
the one in Texas.
Yeah,
I remember
the cops wouldn't even go in.
Yeah, and Andy and I, we were just irate when we had the podcast talking about that, because it was one of those where, like, I could put myself in those parents' shoes, and
yeah.
like, I would have done anything. I mean, I would found a hole, found a way to get. I mean, the fact that there was parents that were being prevented, and while the cops did nothing
Yeah.
is, I mean, that's I think that made me my blood boil even more because it was just a very clear and obvious. I mean, you saw the pictures, on TV of the mom screaming, and it was just heart wrenching. The I think for me, the Epstein stuff is so out of left field. It is like a horror movie, watching Seven
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
These are just disgusting creatures. I don't. I mean, they're not human in my mind. They're ghouls. They're vile, and but the acts and what's being described in, even if it's in code or hushed tones, is so just reprehensible that it's hard to even put yourself in the shoes of a parent because the situation is so, it doesn't feel real. And so for me, it is, I don't know. I don't know what it takes for, and maybe that's probably a problem for a lot of parents and Americans being like, all right, I thought we addressed this, Pizzagate thing already, and that's got to be a hoax. And they would, I think there is I'd rather bury my head in the sand because this is so vile
Yeah.
that, and I have, like, what am I going to do? Um, so I guess I get that level of complacency on the situation, but the anger towards the people covering it up should be palpable. And I think in a lot of ways that it is. That Epstein was the unifying topic and situation that brought the left and the right together. And everybody's upset about it. And that is a very much of a white pill. The fact that it has not gone away, even through all 4 years of Biden, the memes of Epstein didn't kill himself were prevalent on social media. And so that is a good thing, that it something is so evil that people still recognize evil, um, even if it's not. And I mean, we have to put your hats off to Massey and Ro Khanna for pushing the bill through to get what we did get. Because I think for me, it wasn't even just what we got, it's actually what we didn't get that is almost a white pill, because it just shows that even a bill through Congress that the president signs into law, the government can ignore. And I think people saw that and now kind of understand the government is 100% corrupt. And there is no law, there is no vote. I mean, even if you were to vote the right people in, like Thomas Massey, you're still going to get a government that says, screw you, I'm not doing that. And I think people are waking up to that fact.
Well, because all the people that line their pockets, including one certain little tiny area in the Middle East that lines the pockets of over 90% of our politicians on both sides. There's not too many people that don't take the APAC money, honestly. And more Republicans take it than the Democrats, which I always thought it was bizarre that Bernie Sanders didn't take it considering his heritage. But good for him. You know what I mean? I'm not a Bernie fan, but good for him. Good for AOC for not taking it, and you give credit where credit's due, but at the end of the day, they're the ones controlling the show. They're the ones, that are running these banks. They're the ones who are controlling, and they're the puppet masters. They're pulling all the strings, man. And it's that pecking order I've talked about for years now. You know, the governments are only third in charge, really. It's the banks they're the top dogs. They're the one pulling all the strings. And then it's your oil and your big pharma and your defense contractors, military industrial complex, and the corporations and all those people like that. And the central banks give them money to line the pockets of the politicians who make the laws. And then what it is just one big money laundering operation.
Yep,
Just
it just
like
goes this way.
it just keeps going in a circle. You know what I mean? And then people, when the Somalia thing went down, or they found out they were putting up the fake daycares in Minnesota. Do people not realize that the Federal Reserve makes stagnant businesses on purpose to print money to said businesses, just so they can pump more money out into the world, and then turn around because the business are stagnant, and they turn around and they can claim a loss on their taxes on that stuff.
Wow.
It's gross.
Wow.
Yeah, it's the behavior that if any one person did it, I mean, again, you look at that's the definition of a Ponzi scheme, and it's legalized if as long as it's the government. You do it like a Bernie Madoff, and you go to prison, but the government can do it because they've got the authority, quote unquote, to do it, and it's just yeah, it is, and I think that to me was maybe a big turning point with the whole Zionism because I started, you hear a lot of the stuff that comes out of the Talmud, and you start reading some of that stuff, and you're like, now I get the Epstein stuff. This explains because of that's the ideology and the religion of we are the chosen and you are not, you are less than, and we can use you because you're not us, and we can do anything we want to you, and it's acceptable because that's what our religion teaches. And I think more and more people are really making those connections. I mean, it's amazing how much Zionistic propaganda that I see on Facebook, and I think because I've started engaging with a lot of the Zionist posts of like Israel support, because I like just throwing in just comments. But like if you read the comments, I would say 70% of the comments are like, "Screw you, get out of our country." And I think for me, it is a white pill that like there is a wave of people now. Granted, this is all online, so um, take that with a grain of salt. But there is a large voice raising up to saying enough's enough. And I think more and more people are waking up to that fact. And I think that's why we went to war with Iran. I mean, Netanyahu's been trying to get every president in the last, 20, 30 years to attack Iran. And he is absolutely desperate. And there is talks that he was threatening to nuke Iran if the United States didn't bomb them, because he knows there is a very short window left of support in the United States. I guess he just met with Modi of India, so he's trying to get his hooks into the next big up and coming country to milk money out of and to destroy itself for supporting their little island of a state. But that's that now. Are we going to be much of a country by the time I think that maybe we finally do wake up and the Christians rise up and say no, there is no thing, no nothing like the Judo-Christian values. It doesn't exist. These are opposite and completely. We are not the same religion. We don't even worship the same God.
Yeah.
And I think people are slowly waking up to that fact. I just don't know if it's soon enough.
Well, and I'm glad you brought that up because there's a lot of Christians out there be like, oh, we all worship the same God. No, we don't. We
No.
don't at all, because there's only one God, and that's Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Period. Period. Okay. And to say that we all serve one God or we all worship the same God is doing a disservice to your God. That is not how it needs to go. Like this whole situation of this Judeo-Christianism and Christian Zionism is way off base. And I'm not too sure where I can finger point where it all began, because it goes back a lot farther than people think. It's not just this Zionist movement is not anything new. I mean, this goes before World War II,
Oh, for
like,
sure.
and even beyond that. So like
I've always understood that Zionism started with the book Rome and Jerusalem, which was written by Moses Hess. And I read that book. And this is the thing that always blew me away about it, is that this happened 50 years before World War II. And the ideology that's in that book is identical to like white centric National Socialism. It is identical to Nazism. The only difference is if you take Mein Kampf and remove any mention of Jew and put Germanic people, you have Rome and Jerusalem by Moses Hess. It's the same shit. It's the same like supremacist type thing. It's just it's all channeled against white German or white Europeans instead of Jews. So it's that was something that blew me away, and that is the very first seedling of what we understand as Zionism today. It all started with that book.
I'll have to check that one out. I've never even heard of that.
You can read it for free online. Moses Hess, Rome and Jerusalem. It's a pretty quick read. Sorry, my cat.
Is it a good read?
It's a
Or is
read.
it like a slogfest?
No, it's not. It's not a slog fest. It's not like super dense or anything like that. But you can feel this guy's hatred for white people, just oozing off the page. You know.
But it even the whole thing where they own the medias and they own the music industry and stuff like that. And there's so much stuff coming out of the music industry now. Like people forget back in the day, Ice Cube got in big
Yeah.
trouble for a song called No Vaseline that he wrote about Easy E because Easy E got this gentleman named, I can't remember his last name, Jerry something. He was the manager of NWA and it ended up breaking up or whatever. And he called him out. He's like, Easy, you're running with a Jew and letting them run the show, or something along those lines. And he got in big trouble for that in the early '90s. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and that's very prevalent in the music industry. And if you talk to a lot of black people, they'll talk about how it was the certain group of people that got into the music industry, and that's why you kept, hearing the N bomb with the hard A and all the song, or the soft A, I should say, in all the songs, because that was all portrayed and set up by them, and glorifying prison and glorifying violence and gangs and stuff like that. That didn't just come out of nowhere. That was kind of planted in the music, and some artists are coming out and talking about it now. It's quite wild. But the the Zionist movement in itself, you know where do you think all the rainbow comes from? Where do you think all that came from? I mean, in the Talmud, there's like 6 or 8 genders they talk about in the Talmud. What's that all about? You
Mm-hmm.
know, and they're the ones pushing all this. You can marry whoever you want, and you can boys can be girls and girls can be boys, and it goes all the way back to that's what Adolf Hitler was mad about, was stuff like that. He didn't like all that stuff. And I'm not edgelording him at all or saying anything, but those books they were burning and stuff like that. I mean, people have heard it by now. There's a lot of this transgender, LGBTQ or
and
ST,
and pedophilia,
yes, and
because
pedophilia.
it was all these Jewish communist university professors who were coming out of like Bauhaus and all the German universities, who were publishing all these books talking about like, yeah, a man can transition into a woman, and when is too young to have sex with a child, and yeah, it was all books like that,
Or
and
you could buy kids on the street in Berlin.
mm-hmm. You
Like,
you could buy a mother-daughter couple on the streets of Berlin. This is why, like, the more I learn about the Weimar Republic, the more I just get freaked out, because I'm like, oh man, all that stuff is happening now.
Bingo.
Not all of it, but it's like we're heading in that direction. Every chick has an OnlyFans now, you know, and really, what is OnlyFans than just the 2026 version of the debauchery of the Weimar Republic? Like, it's the only difference is that it's digital, but you can
right.
probably go find some really weird like mother daughter type stuff on that site.
There's anything. You can find anything on the internet now. It's
Yeah.
gross.
Yeah,
It's
and
gross.
it's all instantaneous. Nobody's saving money. People are borrowing money to buy groceries and then never paying it back with like Klarna and stuff like that. One of those like instant credit things, and they'll start a Klarna account. They'll borrow money, and then they'll just delete it, use a different email address or something like that. They'll somehow create another account, but like what you were talking about with like delinquent credit payments, it's stuff like that too. Like that's more of an economic issue than really, like a morality issue. Sorry, I'm going off on a weird tangent, but like I look at how our world is today, or how America is today, and I'm like, man, we have a lot of striking resemblances to Weimar Germany, and there's only one way that this ends, you know?
I mean, you're not wrong. And I beat that nail down for years. And people, I got called all kinds of names. Oh, you're anti-Semitic and blah blah blah. Which at this point, being called an anti-Semite means nothing
That's a
because you
badge of honor now.
Yeah, it's the new
you
racist.
the
Yeah.
war in Iran and you're an anti-Semite because of that. And Israel portrays these people to be so bad, but little do people know, and they don't talk about it on the media. There are Jews and Christians living in Iran
Yeah.
with Muslims, and they just kind of do their thing, man.
Mm-hmm.
That was Palestine before.
Yep.
Yes.
We basically sold off a part of because they, I loved the. I think it was Tucker interviewing Huckabee, where Huckabee was claiming like Israel was the safest place for Christians, and then Tucker was like, "Well, why is there twice as many Christians in Qatar?" And Huckabee was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, there's twice as many Christians, and they all go to church." And he goes, "Are the churches being burnt down by the Muslims?" And he's like, "No, they're being given to the Christians by the government." And Huckabee was just like, you could just tell his brain broke because like Christians and Muslims can get along. Like I think that is I think one of the greatest propaganda feats ever is the demonization and the driving the wedge between Christians and Muslims post 9/11. Like the constant media of like, these are demons, these are terrorists, and they are the people that you are supposed to hate. And that has been so successful. I think there's still I've got friends that are still hanging on to the mega mantle because of the fact that we have to fight the Muslims.
Yeah.
The funny part about that is Jesus loves everybody, everyone, even the gays, even the Jews, even the Muslims. He loves everybody. But people love to bastardize Christ and what he says or whatever. But just because he loves them doesn't mean he agrees with the way they're worshiping or their lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
but hey, that's not allowed. You can't say that. Muslims bad. Muslims are bad. Get out of here, man. Like, as a matter of fact, Jesus Christ is in the Quran. He's spoken of a lot. They
Very highly.
Positively, yeah.
As a prophet, they believe that he went to heaven, and they believe that he's coming back, like stuff like that, to where like Jews just believe that, Jesus Christ was a Jew who didn't want to pay taxes, according to Ben Shapiro, trying to avoid Roman taxes, what I mean?
A troublemaker who got what he deserved, or got what was coming to him. That's Ben Shapiro's take on Jesus Christ. And that right there, there's still so many Christians that listen to Ben Shapiro, and it's one of those things that I'm like, do you hear what he's saying about your Lord and Savior? This is something, because I'm a pastor's kid. I grew up in church, and something that I never had growing up that I really have developed now as like my second time being in the faith is that whenever I was growing up, if somebody like insulted Christianity or insulted God or insulted Jesus, I just let that slide off. Like I was just like, whatever, it's no big deal. But now I think about it and I'm like, you should shut the hell up. You should not be talking about the creator of the universe like that, and right. Jokes are one thing, but like outright insults, where you try to take something that Jesus said, or you try to belittle him or minimize him. That's something where I'm much closer to a place in my life where I'm like, that might get you punched in the face, and I feel like that's not that I want violence, but I feel like that is an attitude that maybe more Christians should be adopting, because why would we allow that? If we're all Christians and if we're supposed to be living in a Christian country, freedom of speech be damned. I don't care. If somebody tries to belittle the guy who saved your life, maybe you should punch them in the face,
My man. I mean, Christians should have more of a backbone. They really should, because I think we'd be in a lot different place than we are now had they had a backbone, but that
Right.
includes myself, you know what I mean? But you're supposed to, turn the other cheek and blah blah blah, but we also had crusades, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of reminds me of something that I really appreciated from Jordan Peterson in one of his talks. He talked about how the Bible it talks about the meek shall inherit the earth, and there is this idea that we're just supposed to always turn the other cheek no matter what. And he had talked about the fact that the original translation, I don't remember if it was Hebrew or Greek, but the word meek is someone who is dangerous, who carries a sword but chooses not to use it.
Mm.
And I remember being like, that was a light bulb moment for Christianity, because that's one of the things that I just don't like. I don't like about any group that tries to play the biggest victim. And that's it. It ticks me off when Candace does this, and sometimes when Tucker does it, of like, Christians are being persecuted. We are the victims. Everybody is out to get us. And there is truth to that, but there is also a lot of Christians that view that as, if I get persecuted on earth, then I get praised in heaven. And there is some scriptures to back that up, but it is such a whiny bitch attitude that I've never liked. And I
Yeah.
think Andrew Tate talked about that, because he was a Christian for a while, and he was just like, I'm so tired of apathetical Christians who just have no spine, no backbone, and always play the victim. And that's one of the reasons why he's like, it's why one of the biggest things that attracted me to become a Muslim is they are very passionate about, like, if you mock their God, if you mock Allah, like, they will burn your cartoon to the ground. And
100%.
Christians will just put up with it and
I'll
put up
take
with
it.
it and put up with it.
Which is
Do
why
you
you have a Dearborn, Michigan, which is why you have a Mondani in New York, which is why you have a Omar lady in Minnesota, and God knows where else, these people are coming. Dearborn is an abomination. Okay. Dearborn, Michigan. One thing that really bothers me about Dearborn is that they put up a massive mosque, massive, right between a Catholic church and an Armenian Orthodox church. Catholic to the left, Armenian Orthodox to the right, and then there's this massive mosque. Tell me that wasn't on purpose,
right?
and tell me why they are okay with that. Because I personally would be throwing a fit and not letting that happen.
Well, the okay, so there is. I mean, I know we've been glazing Muslims for a few minutes now, but like they will say openly that they vote for left wing politicians because
Yes.
they view the left as useful idiots. Because they can get all the stuff that they want because they utilize that sort of like protected victim class narrative that the left likes to push. They utilize that, and then they get into power, and then they do things like Dearborn, Michigan. Here is where I'm not 100% against Dearborn, Michigan. There have been Muslims in America for quite a while. Um, I think that you know if you're Muslim, if your family's been here for a long time, if you're second or third generation, American, and you're Muslim, I like I'm one of those where I'm like, you know, I feel like this country kind of belongs to them. So things like Dearborn, I'm like, if a bunch of Muslims want to get together and all reside in one town and they sort of shape that town into what they want, you know what they stopped doing in Dearborn? All the gay stuff. You know, that doesn't happen in Dearborn anymore. If you put out a pride flag like in front of your house, someone's going to rip it down, you know? And that's something where it's like um I'm not 100% against that, you know? I'm not 100% against like, hey, in this town we are Muslims, we are very conservative, and you're not allowed to do your gay shit here, you know? I think Christians could benefit from something like that if they were all just like, you know what, Nashville, Tennessee is going to be the Christian capital of America, and all the Christians in America start moving towards Nashville, and we turn maybe not Nashville, but we do the same thing. Be like, here, if you're wearing some satanic crap out in the open, you're going to get ran out of town. You know, if you're trying to do, if you're putting up a trans flag or a gay pride flag or something like that, you'll get ran out of town.
Well, speaking of running out of town, though, last year the mayor of Dearborn was pretty much uh, trying to force a white man out of the city because he
Mm-hmm.
was against the name changing a street to this Muslim reporter who was very pro Hezbollah and Hamas. This guy
Mm-hmm.
was like, "No, don't do this or whatever. You know, this is not good." And the mayor of Dearborn pretty much attacked him, not attacked him physically, but was like, he said he's going to throw a parade in the streets when he leaves town and pretty much made him feel unwelcome. That's wrong,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So, like, I understand what you're saying, and I don't think what you're saying is wrong at all. But at a certain point, this is our country, and that's that. People
And
Mm-hmm.
need.
I think that's the price of mass immigration, because when you have a trickle of immigrants, if you had populated Dearborn with Muslims, maybe 10 a year, they would have been able to slowly assimilate. When you dump in, 20,000 and you just take them from Libya and you just plop them down into Dearborn, they're going to replicate where they left, because they have the numbers, they have the ability. That's democracy. They got over 51% that showed up, and they elected all Muslims. That's the danger of just taking mass immigration, because you never there is no need to assimilate if you're surrounded with what you left with. And so that's where I think it's important, and that's where I think we would probably all have some different opinions a little bit on the whole immigration crisis, or not crisis, but how we allow immigrants in. Is you to continue any type of like culture, you have to be very judicious with how you allow people to come into your country. And
Mm-hmm.
you look at, I can't remember who was talking about it, but it's like when I go to Europe and I visit Germany, I want my sausage and my Hofbrau beer. I don't want it to be overrun with kebab shops. I want Germany to be Germany. Like if I want kebabs, I'll go to Turkey. But the whole idea of just destroying national culture through immigration it makes people less wanting to travel. At least for me, it's like I want to go to countries to experience their culture, and if their cultures are being destroyed,
Yeah.
and then there is, I've read the fact that there's a purpose to that, because it just sows chaos, and chaos is good for bankers and for others. But like that's somebody was actually just on, I think there was a white homestead on the was it the Hodge twins? I think it's
Yeah.
Hodge twins.
Yep.
Yeah. There was a guy that went on to their podcast, and he was building a white only community,
Mm-hmm.
and they were getting destroyed in the press and stuff, because it's racist. He goes, no, we it's freedom of association. It's supposed to be what we're built on here. And if Dearborn wants to go Muslim and they have the vast majority of the population, I'm like, go for it. But if another community wants to be all white, go for it. If another country, there was what was that town we talked about that had the African American, the blacks, their own Wall Street, and they
Yeah.
were thriving.
That
Like
was
there
North
are,
Tulsa.
then there was they had those riots and massacres, but like that's what was supposed to be America's. Each state was supposed to have its own sovereignty, and then you could pick where you want to go based on how who you wanted to be associated with. And I don't know, that's going to be an interesting one to see how play out, because honestly I think
All right, so Ben, you were talking about the white community that guy was starting, and then we kind of
yeah
talked about North Tulsa or states being sovereign. I think
yeah
that's where you froze.
sovereign rights, and to be able to obviously kind of find where you want to best fit in. But what I'm kind of nervous is the fact that the GOP is kind of burning their party to the ground.
Mhm.
Democrats are, I mean, I don't think there's much respect for them, especially after the talk of Biden being the ideal man of being healthy and cognitive. His cognitive ability was sharp as a tack. That's right. That's what
Mm.
they're talking about.
Did
But
you see the picture of him sitting in coach on an airplane?
if the Democrats get back in and open the borders back up, we're going to have a lot more Dearborns.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is going to be more tensions, race tensions in the United States than ever before. And I think that's not going to be a bug. That's going to be purposeful, because they want that constant divide. So the fingers aren't being pointed at them anymore. And
see, I question on how successful that attempt is going to be, because I think because there are, first of all, today there's way more black right wingers than ever before. There's way more gay right wingers than ever before. I've also been seeing a wave of like, there was a wave of like detransitioners, people who were trans, and then they're like, no, this whole thing is BS. It doesn't work. I've also seen a lot of gay guys recently on TikTok who are like, yeah, I used to be gay, and then I found Christ, and they're sort of documenting their going back to either being straight, and a lot of these guys are like, I'm living a celibate life now. Anyway, the point that I'm making is that there seems to be this big shift away from all those from the tension between all these groups, as in like conservatives and blacks, or conservatives and gays, or like that. There seems to be a big movement away from those tensions. And there's a guy named Andre Williams, and he's a black guy, and he makes content that is specifically for black people, and it's this guy who's basically like, look at what they've done to us, look at what they've done to our people, and he's like, you need to stop pretending that there's going to be ships that go back to Africa. We're not going back to Africa. This is our country. This is our land. Our ancestors fought and died for it. Like, that we're Americans. We need to act like it, And I, as a pasty pink white guy, I listened to that and I'm like, hell yeah. Like, I was like, I love this. I love black people talking about this. There's also another thing happening in the black community called the quarter zip movement. And it's basically young black men who are like, we're not going to dress like faggots. We're going to dress like young professional men who have a career. And so they wear jeans or slacks, and they wear a sweater with like a short zipper. They look like they jumped out of a Land's End catalog. But the point of the whole thing is like, listen, our culture has been utterly destroyed from floor to ceiling, and nobody takes us seriously. Nobody trusts us, and we want to change that. And I see tons and tons, and myself included, white people going like, yes, let's do this. Like, this is great, And so I think we're actually sort of trending towards a more, I think we're actually trending away from racial tension. I think we're actually heading towards it, because ever since the Obama years, and all the racial tension that has built up since 2008, I think people on both sides are starting to be like, hey man, I think this was planned. And because whenever I go to the grocery store, all of the things that I hear on all the podcasts and YouTube videos about black culture or white culture, all this stuff just doesn't exist at the grocery store. It just doesn't exist in my real everyday day-to-day life. Those are extremely rare whenever like something actually racist happens. And I think that fortunately is the direction that we're heading towards, is away from all these tensions where people are being like, fuck being white, fuck being black, I don't care about any of this crap anymore. I'm an American.
The day is going to come, and I actually pray for this day to come. I've talked about it for many years now, to where the backwoods guys, deep in the people who live in the mountain, like the Appalachian folks, man, when they come out of the mountains, and then you get these gangbangers from the city, the real ones that do some real stuff out there,
Mm-hmm.
and you get them together and they decide they're going to unite,
They're gonna make
people
grape
in power
flavored
have a
moonshine.
dude. Well, yeah, that probably the best weed. But the fact of the matter is, if and when that happens, people in power are in very big trouble.
Oh yeah.
Very big trouble.
Yep, I agree.
Well, and I pray for that. I do, because that would be the ultimate unification of the United States. The people who you wouldn't think that we're going to join together. Like the real hardcore gangbangers out of Detroit or L.A. Get with the Appalachian folks and decide, hey, we're going to handle our business together. Let's do this, boys. You know, that's going to be a different animal for people to deal with, and I welcome that. I'm here for all that. I would be
Oh yeah.
I would be happy to join that cause, honestly.
That's what makes me so excited about the internet just as an entity is you can hear all the things that like you were shielded from for forever, you know? Like there's more, not to just keep shoehorning black people, into the conversation, but like um the like what happened to black culture in America, or to the larger black community in America. Like more and more black people are waking up to the fact that, hey, um it's, I mean, the Republicans are still evil, but they're evil for totally different reasons. It's not the GOP that destroyed black America. It
The
is
CIA.
an CIA, the Democratic Party. Like the Democratic Party, I think pulled the trigger initially. CIA just made it worse. But like you had the southern strategy, but also like uh you had the push for unemployment and welfare back in the 50s and the 60s. And I think that is the single thing that has kept them down all this time, is that it was like forced onto them, you know, to where they you had Southern Democrat politicians going around saying, "Hey, black people, like, man, white people sure are pieces of shit, aren't they? Well, you know what? You should get what's yours. Go join an unemployment line. If you've been having trouble finding a job, that's because we owe you some unemployment, or we owe you some food stamps." And you get them hooked on that, and then ever since they de-incentivize fatherhood, black fatherhood is a joke now. And it's that's another one of those things that like the the black population of America is starting to wake up to stuff like that, you know. And I think, I keep making the same point over and over, sorry, but I think that keeps pushing us towards less tension, because blacks and whites simultaneously, it's slow, but what's happening is we're both stopping pointing the finger at each other and realizing, like, oh, hold on, wait a second, it's these fucking people. It's these rich and powerful elites. It's these politicians that have been driving this and pushing this for a century
The
almost.
Epstein class.
The Epstein class,
Right.
absolutely.
I live in a black neighborhood. I'm in Detroit. I am the minority in my neighborhood. I live here with my wife. We're safe here. Like, my neighbors are really nice. Everybody talks. Like, when I'm out there talking to or walking my dogs, the neighbors talk to us and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all that crap you see on TV, it just
Yeah,
doesn't happen.
yeah,
Not to say that things don't happen, but the way they portray it is not the way it's really happening in real life.
yeah.
I because I live it. I live it every day. I go to the
Mm-hmm.
grocery store, I walk my dogs, you know, and everybody's pretty cool, man. Like, it's just what it is.
Yeah. I mean, I remember whenever I first moved up to Michigan, one of the first jobs that I got was in a nursing home, and I was an orderly, and I worked with a majority black women. And I remember one of the first things that just kind of stuck out in my head is I was like, I mean, they were always asking for overtime. They were always willing to work a double. And I was like, and I never wanted overtime. I wanted to work the least amount as possible. And these ladies were like, I mean, a lot of them were single mothers, and that's unfortunate in its own way. But it's like they were working hard. Like they were workaholics. You know, any opportunity that they had to come in and work, they were taking it because they're like, I need money. I got bills to pay. I got babies to feed, you know. And, you know, you could, after talking to them for a while, you find out that like they're more conservative in some areas than my freaking dad, you know. And just because they believe in working hard and making a living, and you know, and they have a problem with the people who like take advantage of the system and play that game, you know. But I remember that being one of the, in terms of like race, one of the big like eye-opening things of like these women work very, very hard, you know.
That's yeah, that and to piggyback off that, years ago I got myself into some trouble. And I had to go on what I'll call a vacation. Y'all can figure out from there. And do you want to know who the nicest person I met was in there? Well, not who, but what?
What?
It was a Muslim man. He was
Mm-hmm.
the coolest dude ever. He was like my buddy while I was in there until I got out. We never talked again when I got out, but he was a super cool guy.
Mm-hmm.
So for us to sit here and be like, well, all Jews are bad and all Muslims are bad, or all, whites are bad, or all, black people are bad, or whatever it is, it's so dumb to think that way, because at the end of the day, all of us just want to live our lives, raise our families. Like, we pretty much almost have the same purpose, is to, be left alone, live our lives, and just raise our families as we see fit.
Yeah.
When it boils down to, if you actually sat down and talked to somebody from another culture, another color, or whatever, you pretty much end up in the same place. We just want to raise our families and be left alone
Yeah.
and do our thing. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And but the media refuses, and the government refuses, like you said, you got to be mad this person's black, or these white people have been keeping you down and blah blah blah. Like, once people actually stop falling for it, that's going to be an amazing thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to stop falling for it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and
that's
I think
a good point.
legacy media has always kind of been the tool to keep the divisions going. And I mean, it can't be that much longer before CBS, NBC, like the anchor, the nightly news, all of that stuff just dies. And like that last, because I mean, granted, they love to stir the pot, so to speak, on social media, but like that one voice of, like, Walter Cronkite is dead and gone, and now now um podcasters are way more popular than the news agencies, or
Yeah.
just I learned so much faster about what's going on by opening X than I do about turning on NBC.
Yeah.
So I think especially the younger generation is they're understanding, especially with AI, they're understanding, like, if I read something or if I see something, I gotta fact check that myself. And there's almost like an instant distrust of what we receive, and I think that's healthy. There's a lot of boomers, and one of the things that I don't like about Tucker is he talks about, oh, the distrust in the government is it's going to be horrible, and it's, we need to be able to trust our institutions, and it's like, no, you should always have a healthy distrust of anything, any institution, especially the government. And I think that is being kind of baked in the cake a little bit with the next generation, of being like, I mean, there's just so many times my parents will send me something and like, is this real? I'm like, no, that's AI. And it's obviously AI. How did you not see that? And the younger generation is kind of being programmed to look at everything very critical and going, is this truthful or not? And I think that's going to be very good in the long run, of having a kind of a baked in distrust of the narrative. And if that, that's kind of the hallmark of conspiracy theorists, but at the same time, it's so important, and it's becoming more and more relevant, because I think more and more people, between Epstein, JFK, like the shooting at Trump, and Charlie Kirk, there's so many narratives that are just clearly bullshit, and I think people are finally being like, yeah, I know that's bullshit.
The fact that the left is finally coming out and being like, nah, we're not going to go for this anymore, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is huge. But then there's the other hand where, like I said earlier, MAGA has just turned into this, whatever he says is gold, and
Cult.
trust the plan. It's 5D chess, bro. Like, look, man, your guy's a pedophile. He's a like he works for Satan. He's not a Christian, you
Mhm.
know, and people need to realize that and very fast.
It was kind of telling when Trump had that talk about the fact that he's like, I'm not going to go to heaven. Like, it was interesting to see even the look on his face, because what he wasn't saying, you could almost hear of like, I've done some horrible shit.
You know what? It reminds me of back in 2016 when he was campaigning the first time, and they're like, "Have you read the Bible?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, sure." And they're like, "What's your favorite?
What's your favorite
verse?" And he's like, "Well, the one about forgiveness." It's like, yeah, okay, of course it is.
There you
Of
go.
course, that's your favorite part.
Well, at Christmas time, and I remembered I got really upset on one of my last podcasts I ever did about it. At Christmas/Hanukkah time, dude, he put on this big Hanukkah extravaganza for all his people, you know, and he's got Mark Levin putting him in a headlock saying, "This is our first Jewish president." And Trump's like, "Yeah, it's true. It's true."
Mhm.
And he's like getting Miriam Adelson up on stage talking, you know, whatever. And hey, I gave you all this money and blah, blah, blah. What did Americans get for Christmas? A Truth Social post that said, "Merry Christmas" in all caps, of course.
Mhm.
And I was like, dog, that is so bogue and just not right,
Yep.
you know. But they're the ones who line his pockets. Screw our tax dollars.
Yep, get what you pay for.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Ben, Shaun, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
No, I think it's a great episode. It is a mixed bag. It is sometimes very hard to not be black pilled, and so it is important to kind of look harder and kind of see the flowers through the weeds. And although it is Michigan and we haven't seen the sun in I don't know how many days now, so I'm sure that
84
adds
years.
that adds to the doom and gloom. But no, I appreciate Shaun for being on. It's always nice to have a guest and have a good, healthy conversation. And excited to continue kind of raising the voice and getting more people, at least thinking about some of these topics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Any final words you want to leave us with, Shaun?
Yeah. Turn off your TV, stop voting, and stop paying taxes immediately. Don't egg these people on to do any more that they're doing, because that's what going to the polls and paying taxes done. I'm a huge fan of a tax revolt. I know a lot of people are like afraid of that or whatever, but even if a third of the people or a quarter of the people did it, and there's 330 million people here.
Mm-hmm.
Even if a quarter of the people did something like that, there's nothing they can do about it. Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yep.
So, you know, and I understand that people are still, you know, we got to vote harder in that. Like, you're not voting your way out of this. Turn your TV off. Go love your neighbors.
Yep.
Go love your mom and dad.
That's a fantastic way to end the episode. Go outside, love your neighbors, touch some grass. You know. All right. Well, to the listeners, to the viewers out there, thank you so much for sticking with us. This has been a fantastic episode, and Shaun, we have to have you on as much as possible. So, like, share, subscribe. You can see all the socials down here, so go follow us. Shaun, where can they follow you?
I am not anywhere. I guess I have an Instagram account under my old podcast, Buds in Reality, and the @handle's just @Buds in Reality. But like, I just go there and post memes. I'm not really on Facebook or any of that anymore.
So basically, if you want Shaun Collins, you got to tune into We Love the State. or write him a letter. Yeah. Just trying to do some promo, Ben.
Oh, sorry. I stepped on the promo toes.
Jeez. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. We'll catch you next time. Peace out.